test webinar for the Sahara Challenge for Shelter. And how do you want to do this? Do you want it? We actually haven't figured out how we're going to script this, but maybe we can go through and see.
Yeah, we'll just mark it off as we go. Yeah.
Flip back and forth. I kind of like, why don't I start it and you can do the congratulations screen. Sort of. Okay, so everybody, we're happy to have you here. A big reminder before we start that the webinar is going to be focused on the fundraising aspects of the challenge. The webinar is being recorded so people can watch and listen at any time. You can watch this again if you're joining us live. A reminder that the chat is actually disabled for the webinar, just to make it easier and cleaner to watch the webinar. If you have any questions during the broadcast, so while we're live or anytime after, regarding fundraising, please send an email to Carly. Carly will respond to your email, and if the question and answer is relevant to everybody, she will post the Q&A to our Facebook group, again, following the webinar to keep everybody in the loop so we're all on the same page. So in future, beyond today's fundraising webinar, we're going to schedule some additional webinars on training topics that we think will be useful for you, training tips that we think will be useful. I have to try to, hang on, I'm going to just get that out of the way. As well as some specifics about the trek a little bit down the road, suggestions for packing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would just say tips about the
tips about the trek itself.
The trek itself, yeah.
Trek itself. Okay. Oh, here was my idea about, this was the idea about getting them to stay, but we can just talk about that after. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to just go through our agenda now. Today, what we're going to be covering is we're going to be covering what's happening behind the scenes at the Royal LePage Shelter Foundation, some commonly asked questions about fundraising that Carly has been getting recently and what we've covered in the past, where your funds go and how to describe this to your supporters, how to submit your funds raised, because nothing really matters unless the money comes in the door and we can process those funds. We're going to talk about event sponsorships. We're going to talk briefly about fundraising event ideas or where you can go to get ideas for fundraising. We're going to talk about general fundraising tips and best practices. And we're going to just finish with the 3 A's of fundraising, and you're going to want to hear what those are. But before we do, I'm going to hand it over to Carly.
Okay, so I'll just say, hi, and then just want to congratulate everybody for your fundraising success to date. Just looking at the numbers, we've got over $115,000 raised. We have 2 trekkers who have already hit their $5,000 fundraising goal. So a huge congratulations goes out to Danielle Margolis in Winnipeg and Lynn's Hunt in Peterborough, Ontario. 93 of you have started doing your fundraising online, which is fantastic. And we have over 700 donations already in the door. The most common gift is $100, which I think is just a fun and interesting fact in terms of you setting expectations with your donors. No, that's.
I think that's a fact. Just a fun fact. It's a great number.
And
unless you want to say something like, okay, so the common gift is $100. So if you sort of do the math, generally speaking, you'd need about 50 people to sponsor you, but that's just a general, average.
Well, that's a good point though. So if you do the math on that, you need about 50 people to donate $100, which might make that $5,000 goal seem a little bit easier to accomplish.
Right.
And then in terms of focusing on these online fundraising pages, do you want me to just say something about? In case it isn't obvious, we're really keen for you to do the bulk of your fundraising where possible online. It's the easiest way for you to collect donations. It's the easiest way for us to properly receipt and acknowledge donations, and it gives us this business about the best picture of where we are at any given time.
Yeah, I think I would say maybe real time is not the right way of saying it, but it gives them a snapshot or a measure of where they're at, right? Because donations that are done online with credit cards show up immediately. So it does, it gives you that real time view of where you are in your fundraising. Okay, thanks, Carly. So again, keep up the great work, everybody. We know that you're committed to doing the fundraising and keep it up. That's awesome. So we thought we would give you a little sense of what's happening behind the scenes at the Royal LePage Shelter Foundation. For those of you who are maybe newer to us, or just those of you who haven't really given this much thought before. So I thought I'd just let you know, how many staff do we have? Well, really the Shelter Foundation staff is just 3 of us. It's myself and Carly and Ruhina. Ruhina is our donations processing coordinator, who's filling in for our regular staff member, Buitamelo, who's on maternity leave. And believe it or not, that's it in terms of staff who are full-time devoted to running the Shelter Foundation. We do have a few other folks in other departments that lend a hand, accounting and finance and IT and all that, but they have many other aspects to their jobs. So Shelter isn't their main gig. So really it's just me and Carly and Ruhina holding down the fort. In the past month, as you can probably imagine, we've been happily inundated with all the year-end donations that come in December. We've got the Shelter Awards coming up, and I'll soon be on the road to present these awards at many of the provincial award galas. We'll soon be heading into tax receipt season, which is amazing. Last year, the previous year, we issued close to 6,000 tax receipts. Then we'll be doing our annual financial audit. Soon after that is the National Garage Sale for Shelter on May 11th. Our Toronto-based 4th annual Texas Hold'em charity tournament that we do here in Toronto. And of course, on top of all of that, we have all the amazing fundraising events hosted by Royal LePage offices, new commission donors joining us all the time, new Royal LePage offices, more shelter partnerships to arrange. So the reason I mention this to you is just to give you a glimpse into some of the kind of puzzle pieces that make up the Shelter Foundation activities, along with our wonderful Sahara Desert Challenge that you are all taking part in. So let's just dive in now and talk about the most commonly asked questions related to fundraising. And really, we've said this before, and it can't be underemphasized. Your first place to look when you have a question related to fundraising is the fundraising Q&A document and the tax receipting Q&A document. These PDFs can be found in the files section of our Facebook group. And you also got a hard copy mailed to you when you first registered to be part of the challenge. So this is a useful document to have. And we would encourage you to share these with your assistants, those of you who have assistants or team members that are working on fundraising activities with you. Share those documents. Only if you can't find your answer, meaning the answer to your question in these documents, only then should you send an email to Carly. So I know it might seem easier to just fire off a quick email to Carly. She is just a huge, amazing resource, font of information. But please keep in mind that with 120 trekkers and the rest of Carly's very important job responsibilities, and some of which were incorporated in what I just described, you're much more likely to find the answers to these commonly asked questions faster yourself. Now, having said that, Carly, why don't you just speak to when you do want to hear from people?
Yeah, I absolutely want to hear from all the trekkers. I want to get to know you all. I want to chat with you all leading up to the trek. I want to talk about your fundraising ideas. I want to talk about your fundraising events and what your plans are. I want to hear about any questions and concerns you have about the trip. I want you to feel able to contact me by phone or email with any questions that you might have that you're not really comfortable asking the whole group on Facebook, or something that is really specific to your particular situation. I'm very, very, very keen to help you, but it's just sometimes difficult for me to support everybody in the best way possible and organize our trek in larger ways when I'm flooded with questions where the answers are in fact in the fundraising Q&A and the tax receipting Q&A.
Okay, great. So hopefully that's clear. What we're going to do is we're just going to give you on screen so you have it in front of you and you can refer back to this. The, believe it or not, most commonly asked questions at the moment are, who should checks be made payable to? They should absolutely be made payable to Royal LePage Shelter Foundation donation checks. It's just the simplest and cleanest way of doing it. And as well as when you are collecting funds from your fundraising events or cash donations, if you are issuing a check on behalf of multiple donations, and we'll get into that, again, the check should be made out to Royal LePage Shelter Foundation. Our address is on the screen there. And if you can't remember it, it's in both my email signature, Carly's email signature. So quick reference there. Donors will get their tax receipts in February, generally speaking by email when we have their email address, and we always have their email address for those online donations that are made through your fundraising page by credit card. And so that means receipts in February for all gifts made in the previous calendar year. So any of you who had donors who made donations prior to December 31st, 2018, they're going to get their tax receipt end of February, early March coming up. Anybody who's making donations now, they're going to get their tax receipt in February, late February, early March next year. So hopefully that makes sense. Another question people ask, and Carly gets this email, did you get my check? And, we've kind of jokingly responded here, probably, haha, no, really, we haven't lost a check yet. If you've mailed your checks or couriered your checks to the address that we just gave you, rest assured we've received your checks. We really can't efficiently respond to whether we received your checks. If you recall, a minute ago, I said last year we issued 6,000 tax receipts. That was in a year when we had donations for our last track. We have a lot of checks coming in the door. So we would recommend just please keep a copy of everything you send in and refer to your fundraising page in 2 or 3 weeks, and you'll see that those checks are then reflected. So that in some ways answers or refers to the next question: when will check donations show up on my fundraising page? After the check clears the bank at our end, we'll manually update your page. And remember, if we have, if each of you had 50 checks coming in, let's say 50 donors, that's hundreds and hundreds of checks potentially at any given time. So it may take us a little while to manually update your page. So we're giving you that 2 to 3 week window. But again, the best thing is just keep a copy of all your checks, and that way you know where you're at in terms of your fundraising. So Carly, why don't you, I think you are going to have to sit on this side of the table because you're too delayed. Yeah, but why don't you speak to this little text about tax receipts?
Does that make sense? Or do you want to do this, or do you want?
Okay, you want me to keep going and then you'll do the fundraising?
And then tax receipt, I'll do this little part about where your funds go, and then, or what do you think?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's do that. So I'll keep going.
Because you talked about tax receipts in February, and
okay, so I'll keep going. So this is still me. Okay, so we just a couple of comments here about tax receipts. So we just really encourage you to please review our tax receipting Q&A document. Again, I mentioned it earlier. It's in the file section of the Facebook group. We know it's not super exciting reading, but the best thing is, you really want to understand it. There's lots of real world examples. You don't want to find yourself having made promises to supporters that you can't keep. And really, we are audited every year. CRA keeps track of what we do. We don't want to take any chances with our charitable status. So we really can't do anything that goes against the rules regarding tax receipting. Not necessarily our rules, CRA rules. We can't go against that. So please just make sure you're familiar with that. If you're not sure about your specific situation after reading the tax receipting Q&A, you can certainly ask Carly.
Do you think it's worth putting in there? And I just thought of this now. I mean, just to drive it home, like the auditor comes here and they literally go searching through our files for anything that looks questionable to them. Like that's,
yeah.
So it in their mindset, it's not just like, oh, this is just a one-off, or no one will know. Like that's their job, is to sit downstairs, and they always pull the most.
They pull things
that they think are.
Yeah, that may not be okay. I don't know that. Yeah, it's
a bit specific, but I feel like it drives home this idea that it's not, somebody's not just rubber stamping this, like.
Right. That they're actually their job is to look for things that are basically against the rules, and it's, yeah, so, you might think you're just we'll just make an exception for you, but that's the auditor's job, is to look for where we're actually not following the rules. Yeah. So, okay, great. And just a quick reminder about where your funds are going to go.
Yeah, so just to just to reiterate, I know that we've talked about this a lot, but I just wanted to make it really clear. 80% of the funds that you're raising in participating in this challenge are going to go to your local emergency shelter for women and children fleeing violence. That other 20% is going to support programs across Canada aimed at preventing domestic violence and teaching youth how to develop healthy relationships. I've noticed in a few places that some of you have actually made mention of this 20% going to other women's shelters in Canada. It's a bit of a technicality, but we just think that it's important that your donors know that you're fundraising for two sides of the same coin. You're fundraising for that emergency frontline work at shelters that keep women and children safe and efforts to prevent violence in relationships before it actually starts. We find that in our work that people are compelled to give for different reasons. So outlining that we're approaching this issue from two sides will only help you connect with more of your donors. If you're looking for sort of a quick way of expressing this, we'd suggest that you say 80% of what you raise will go to your local emergency women's shelter and 20% will fund violence prevention programs across Canada.
And on my slide, and you'll see if you're on, like when you, it says if you want to say more, you can include those focused on helping youth. So you can, it's maybe that. Okay. So for this next one, maybe we should just go back and forth so it's not my voice. So why don't I do the first three, and then you can do the next three, which are the event stuff.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to go over a quick primer on how to submit most types of fundraising proceeds to us. We're going to look at a few examples that are common. The first example is pretty straightforward. A friend wants to sponsor me by donating $50 or $100 or $200. That's great. Have them donate online to your personalized fundraising page with their credit card. As we've described, it's the easiest way to give. You will see the donation almost immediately, and it's a great way to see that barometer go up. So somebody wants to sponsor, have them click on your personalized fundraising page link with their credit card and make that donation. But you might have a friend or a grandparent, they're not computer savvy, like my father-in-law, he doesn't like to use his credit card online. Okay, again, really straightforward. Have them write a check made payable to Royal LePage Shelter Foundation and send that in to us, to Carly's attention, and just make sure that if the donor's full mailing address is not on the check, provide that to us. You can actually provide it to us in a note, or if you have multiple donors, you can use the pledge form that's available. I feel like that should be on there, don't you think? Or do you think you just keep it specific to like an individual? Just add a
I think
note.
It's just a one-off gift. Yeah, make sure we have their address. And obviously, I know that they're in a challenge tracker, so if I see Colby Bain send me a check, probably it's for his fundraising page. But
your name and the, you're right.
And just a little note that it be added to your Sahara Desert Challenge. And that's not necessarily for me, because I know, but it's for our accounting department. And
yeah, that's good. That's a good point.
So that'll follow that note will go with their check kind of all the way to the.
All right, I'm going to update that on the slide. Okay, so here's another example. Someone gave me $50 cash. You know what? I'm just going to pocket that cash. I need to pick up a few things at the dollar store. I'm going to pocket that cash, and I'm going to make a $50 donation to my page using my own credit card. Well, that might seem simple and straightforward. That's actually not the way to do it. If you do that, it means you'll get the tax receipt, not the true donor. There's also a little bit of a confusing email that the donor is going to get about donating, online when they really didn't. So the best thing to do is deposit the cash into your own bank account and send Carly a check for that amount donated, along with a note providing the donor's contact details, as I've just previously described. And of course, I'll say your name, Sarah. You can save up cash donations from multiple people and mail in one personal check with the pledge form that you can find. It's in the file section of the Facebook group. So fill out that pledge form, and that'll break down the check by donor. If you don't have a personal check, like if you just don't have checks, you can get a money order or a bank draft, which represents cash. Straightforward. Hopefully that'll make sense for you. So Carly, why don't you talk about this example?
Just wait for it to come up. Let me see what it.
I think I counted. It's like 12 seconds.
12 or 15. Okay. Okay, so just in terms of, just for some examples about submitting fundraising event money. So we've come up with a few scenarios here. So let's say you hosted a fundraising event and you raised $2,000, and that included John Smith donating his 50-50 winnings back to the cause, and Jane Brown giving you an extra cash donation because she felt very moved by the speaker that you had there. That's great. What I'll need you to do in that case is mail me a check for the total event fundraising and a pledge form that has John and Jane's full contact information and the amounts that they donated. Just be sure to check out that tax receipt Q&A to make sure that they're eligible for a tax receipt first. But at the same event, a few people asked if they could make it.
That's the next slide.
Oh, that's the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
The same event. Okay, so at the same event, a few people asked if they could make additions.
It's just a reiteration of like kind of what we already told them to do, but it's more about, you know.
I wonder if we should change the example though, because we've got Jane gave an extra cash donation at the same event.
See, that's what makes this different, is they're collecting checks. We want to make sure that they tell them to make their checks out to Royal LePage Shelter Foundation.
Okay. If at the same event, a few people asked if they could make additional donations, what you're going to need to do is tell them to make out a check to Royal LePage Shelter Foundation. And then what I'm going to need you to do with that is send those to me.
Sorry, can I just interrupt you?
Yeah.
When you have, the best thing to do is read the question from the screen.
Okay.
Use the exact wording from the
This
screen.
is the same event. Now what do I do? Okay.
And then answer it using your, because if you reword the question and they're reading it and you're saying it somewhat differently, it might be confusing.
Yeah. Okay, so at the same event, a few people asked if they could make an additional donation. I told them to make out a check to Royal LePage Shelter Foundation. Now what do I do? Okay, in this case, I need you to send those checks to me along with a note that they are straight donations you collected at your event, and use that pledge form to make it easier to keep track. Make note.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I had here, make note that, like, make sure you don't wait longer than 6 months.
Send us these checks. Okay.
Yeah.
What if no receipts are needed from my fundraising event proceeds? For example, you raised funds at a bake sale or at a silent auction. This is going to be the only time when you can use your own credit card to submit those fundraising dollars. Please be sure that you note in the recognition field that you're submitting event funds, so for instance, car wash proceeds, and send me a quick email heads up that that's what you've done. Okay, I'm hosting an event and have a few local businesses interested in sponsoring the event. That's great. If you need the sponsorship dollars to cover the cost of your event, which is entirely reasonable, then ask businesses and companies to make their sponsorship checks out to you. Spend the money as necessary toward event expenses, and then include any funds left over in your final fundraising event submission to me, payable to Royal LePage Shelter Foundation. If you're positive you won't need the funds to cover your expenses, sometimes sponsorships just pad the fundraising total for lower cost events, then you can have businesses and companies write checks to Royal LePage Shelter Foundation, and you'll send those in along with your event proceeds. You can't have a cent of this money back, so please choose wisely.
Oh, you know what? Sorry, hang on. I come around to this side. I actually turned that into a question.
Oh. So,
which we'll have to print out the slides too, but we've got here, I don't need the funds provided, like to sort of slow it down, like to have, as opposed to you just talking on the previous slide.
I don't need the funds provided by my event sponsor to cover my expenses. I think we need to move that down into the answer.
Move this one?
Yeah, I don't need the funds to cover.
Okay.
What if I don't need the funds provided by my event sponsors to cover my expenses?
I don't? Yeah, okay. All right. And then
that's totally reasonable. Sponsorships can just be used to increase the fundraising total when the events don't have significant costs. Only then can you have businesses and
just
companies
make that change right here.
Write checks payable to Royal LePage Shelter Foundation. Send these along with your event proceeds.
And then, so you're saying let's sort of
that's totally reasonable. Where that
sponsorships can be used to increase the fundraising for events don't have significant costs. Okay.
Only then can you have businesses and companies write checks payable.
Oh, that color doesn't look the same. Shoot. That's what happens when I end up downloading. I'll have to fix it. Back and forth between slides I think it might be different. Okay.
Only then can you have businesses, companies write checks payable to send these in along with your event proceeds.
Reminder, you won't be able to utilize any of these funds to cover your event costs.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'll go back and make these notes match what.
Yeah, exactly. Once I figured the script, we can.
Yeah, so you don't want to end up in the hole with no recourse for covering your event costs.
Right.
Do you want me to do this last bit on event sponsorships?
Yeah.
Or just a few more things to note on event sponsorships. I encourage you to access that sponsorship request template and the sponsorship acknowledgement template in the file section of our Facebook page. Since sponsors receive something of value in exchange for supporting your fundraising event, so for instance, the opportunity to promote their company, putting their logo on your signs, getting a mention from the stage, receiving free tickets from you to the event, a social media thanks. These are just a few examples of the ways that they might be or benefiting from being a sponsor in your event. They are not entitled to a tax receipt. But a tax receipt isn't terribly valuable to a business, whereas a write-off is. By giving them a letter that states the value of their event sponsorship, i.e. what they paid you, they'll be able to claim this as an advertising or marketing expense. It doesn't matter if you need to use any or all of their sponsorship dollars to cover your expenses. They would be eligible to write off the total value of their support for your event.
I'm not sure we need to go into that much detail. I think that's confusing.
Do you?
Yeah. I think we should just say they'll be able to claim this as an advertising marketing expense, because where I find people get confused is a sponsor covered the event. So that means I should be able to give tax receipts to everybody who came. Oh, well, because the sponsor covered it. And so the idea of like hooking up sort of receipts with how much the sponsor is covering to cover the expenses, like I'd rather just say basically that they can claim as a marketing expense. Doesn't matter if you need to use any or all of their sponsored dollars to cover expenses. That would be, yeah. I just don't even think that they need to know that, because the write-off is $500 no matter what, whether it's covering expenses or whether it's.
I think I put it in there because we had talked about the difference between using the sponsorship dollars and not. Like I'm concerned that they'll think, oh well, I spent it on the flowers, so does it count? Like, can they?
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking like it doesn't really matter. Like basically they're sponsoring your event. They don't get a tax receipt. They get this acknowledgement letter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
As you're talking it through, I'm getting confused.
Okay.
Just by that last bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So why don't I do this section, and then this next one, the next one, you can kind of speak to in first person, like when planning. Okay. So this is the slide. I don't know how far back you are now. Are you at
event sponsorship? Okay. Yeah. Ask yourself these questions.
Okay. So if you're planning fundraising event, and so just remind me where's that fundraising ideas document in the files? Like everything's there.
Yeah.
So just
I'll check right now.
Okay. We're gonna just so since we've been talking about fundraising events, we thought we would just give you some strategies around how you might go about planning a fundraising event. And we're not going to go into detail about all the different kinds of fundraising events that are out there. We did give you sort of some fundraising ideas document in the file section of the Facebook group. And there are other trekkers that have done fundraising events in the past, and they're maybe willing to sort of share their ideas with you through our Facebook group. But definitely reach out to Carly if you're planning any kind of what we call a fundraising event, which is where you're essentially organizing something for people to pay to attend, and they're coming to a place. Coming to your event. We didn't talk about yet whether we want to break down that event versus initiative thing. We may want to do that earlier, because it feels
that to me confuses me more.
So do you want to just do it here? Just say, okay, just like what do I mean by fundraising event? Because I don't want Anna Russell to go, oh, with my soup for shelter, is that, you know what I mean? Like that's not an event. So do we want to just say it here that a fundraising event is defined as
well, I think our fundraising list is fundraising events and fundraising initiatives. Like the ideas list is events, and it is things like the soup or selling jam or whatever it is that.
Right. But do you think we should say what a fundraising event is, or do you think it's obvious, like people will know?
It's obvious.
Okay.
Although maybe we want to call it a fundraiser or a fundraising initiative or
So
Fundraising
events, fundraising events, and
how much? So, like for instance, how much time do you really have to plan a successful fundraising event or initiative, keeping in mind your business and family commitments, right?
Right. Is it initiative or is it activity? Fundraising events or activities?
Sure.
Yes. Let's see if that works as we're talking it through. Okay, so we've given you like a ton of fundraising ideas to help you with your brainstorming. There's a document in the files section of the Facebook group, just different types of fundraising ideas. They're not all events, but they're different types of ways of raising funds. We thought we'd speak now to specifically if you're hosting a fundraising event or if you're organizing an activity. In other words, if you're doing something other than just asking someone for a straight donation. So the thing to keep in mind is, who is your audience? Oh, you know what I just realized is I'm not following necessarily the best practice of PowerPoint, which is each bullet point going one at a time. Do you think that matters, or do you think it's just fine to have it all on screen? Like my natural inclination is just to put it all up there, but I have been told you really should like do one bullet point at a time. I probably should. Okay, I may go back and redo that this afternoon.
I mean, it might be good for our people because they just get so easily
I'm just
distracted, but
like it's funny because I have it in the agenda because I was copying this from another slide. It was animated there. And then the rest, which was new, I didn't do that. So I probably should do that. Okay, I'm going to go back and do the answers okay. So the first thing to think about is who is your audience? Just ignore all that flipping around that I just did. So who's your audience? What do your friends enjoy doing? Like how can you turn what they already like to do and find fun into a money-making activity? So,
let's put friends, colleagues, clients, like just hash that out a bit. Or your network or whatever we want to say, but
I would say friends / clients.
Yeah.
I think they
should get it, but
what do your people enjoy doing? Your friends, clients, and colleagues. What do they like to do? How can you turn what you're already doing, what they already find fun, into a moneymaker? What are your strengths? What are you good at? So, if you're really good at baking cookies or baking, maybe you do an amazing bake sale because that's something that you're really good at. How much time do you really have to plan a successful fundraising event or an activity? That's something that's really critical because sometimes people don't realize how much time goes into the planning phase of doing an event. Just because your event, is a 2-hour movie night with a silent auction, it's not 2 hours. It's 2 hours and all the planning that goes up to it. So just be honest with yourself and figure out how much time and you have to devote to planning a successful event. And how much is the event idea or the event itself going to cost? So this is really critical in anything, fundraising events or an activity where you have to spend money up front in order to make that happen. Always prepare a budget before you commit to hosting an event. The last thing you want to do is discover that your costs outweigh your revenue. And you have to make sure you end up in the black before you invest your time and effort in doing this. When I didn't realize you had some other stuff here about making sure having someone to help you in the previous one. So I'll make sure I look at the notes. So for planning a fundraising event, what's your first step? What do you need to do?
So the first thing I'd love you to do is let me know what your plans are. Please show me a copy of your event flyer or the content that you've drafted for your Facebook event. It really never hurts to have an extra pair of eyes. Take a look at these sorts of things, and it's important for me to make sure that the Royal LePage Shelter Foundation logo is being used properly. So, for instance, sometimes things are sent to me and the logo is stretched out in really interesting ways, or it's a different color, and just from a brand,
just brand consistency,
brand consistency. We need to make sure that the logo is being used the way that it was meant to be. I'll figure that out.
Yeah.
I would also consider, if your event is what we call public facing, so in other words, it's an event that's open to the entire community versus an event that's taking place in your office or just for your close group of friends, I can definitely post the details on our Facebook page, the Royal LePage Shelter Foundation Facebook page, that is, and I can add the event to the RLP Network calendar of events. I would also encourage you to consider using a site like Eventbrite to sell tickets to your fundraising events and to collect registration fees. You'll save yourself a huge amount of work and headache with your sales being tracked automatically and not needing to chase buyers down for payment. Sites like Eventbrite will also help on the big day because you'll be able to pull a report of paid guests to use at your registration desk. Just a reminder here that you cannot use your online fundraising page to collect event registration fees. Even if you're just asking people to donate $20, for instance, to come to your group yoga class, you'll have to, in this case, you'll have to collect funds at the door or in advance via a payment system like Eventbrite. Coming to any event provides attendees with some value. They are not eligible for a tax receipt and the fun of whatever it is that you have planned for them. Another tip here is to not stop with just an entry fee. You'll be leaving a ton of money on the table. People who attend fundraising events expect to spend more money once they're actually there. So we encourage you to hold a 50-50, to sell a deck of playing cards and draw a winner from a fresh deck at some point in the evening, sell tickets for a mystery basket that's valued at $250, for instance, organize a silent auction with donated items, and or make a clear ask from the stage for a higher value donation. And recognize those who volunteer to do so with a round of applause. We want you to keep in mind that it's a good idea to offer ways to support the cause at a variety of price points. So for instance, a $20 draw ticket option might mean that 10 people contribute who wouldn't otherwise do so, and a $1,000 auction item might motivate those with deeper pockets to contribute as much as they're able to. I also encourage you to ask each other what moneymakers were most successful at your fundraisers. Let's help each other out here. So if people in Alberta loved a fundraising game that you played at an event, it's very likely that it would work well at an event in British Columbia as well. My next tip here is to ask suppliers and vendors if they give discounts for charitable events. They may have a form that myself or Shannon will need to sign, or they may just need our charitable registration number, which is on the screen there, but it certainly costs you nothing to ask them. We also encourage you to spread the word about your fundraising events and fundraising events and activities. Please don't rely on Facebook or a Facebook post to sell all of your tickets. I encourage you to contact local media with a press release. You can find a template that you can start with in the files section of the Facebook group. I encourage you to tweet the details to any of your local news teams, post an online community calendar, put up flyers at local coffee shops or your local library. You can ask your friends to post flyers on general message boards at their offices or places that they frequent. You could also ask your local shelter partner to share the details of your event or your activity with their supporters on social media or in any kind of newsletter that they may send out on a quarterly basis, for instance. And then my last tip,
request, or I don't know,
suggestion. Maybe?
Yeah.
Or
my last offer. I don't know if it's an offer. So.
Offer here is let me know if you could use some of the Royal LePage Shelter Foundation's promotional supplies. We don't have a lot here, but we would certainly be happy to send you a Royal LePage Shelter Foundation banner that's suitable for indoors and outdoor events. We've got some balloons and reusable novelty checks. I will ask, though, that you only ask me for these supplies once your event plans are firm and set. Should I say that I don't want 100 emails after the webinar for balloons?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just say like once your event.
Once your event is set, I'm nervous to get 100 emails after the webinar is over asking for balloons. So please just let me know once your plans are in place, and I'll make sure that you have those supplies well in advance of your event day.
Okay, great. I'm going to delete this fundraising event example slide. Let me just delete it right now because we're going to do this. Okay, so I'm going to give you some general fundraising tips and best practices. I thought I will do this, and then you can do the same thank you part. Yeah. So the best thing is, and it's funny, number one thing that we learn when we start taking fundraising courses as professional fundraisers is, the number one reason people give to charity is because you ask them. So that's the number one reason. So ask people personally to make a donation. And ideally, a personalized email is better than dear friends. So, structure the body of your email and then go back and personalize it. Dear John, how are you? And then go on from there. Don't rely solely on a Facebook post or 2 or 3 or 4 saying, look at what I'm doing. Facebook is pretty passive, and it's a lot easier to ignore a Facebook post than a dedicated email where you've written to your friend and asking for them to make a donation. If you haven't started fundraising yet online, try to get the ball rolling maybe with a more generous donation first. So there's a small number of you who haven't started fundraising online yet. If you haven't, maybe ask a close family member or a friend to make what we would call a stretch donation. So, a pretty substantial donation to get the ball rolling. Last thing you want is for the first, 5 people who sponsor you to donate $10, because then if other people happen to look at that and they see that history, it kind of sets a lower bar. So we want the bar to be higher. Ideally, you could also support yourself either openly or anonymously to get that ball rolling. We would really encourage you to add a section about the Sahara Challenge on your own website. Talk about what you're doing, or include it under the your About Me section on your website, because it's a great way of letting people know what you're doing, and it just you can use it to drive traffic to your to your online fundraising page. Sorry, I'm getting distracted because about that, on the script you had that email signature. I'm just going to take that out for now. So as much as our online fundraising site is fantastic about accepting donations, it's maybe not the best at sending emails directly from the fundraising site, from your online fundraising page, because it doesn't allow you to see who you emailed. There isn't a tracking function. So we would encourage you to send fundraising emails from your personal email address. So basically just go in, copy and paste the draft email or the content that we've drafted for your fundraising emails within the fundraising site, copy and paste that into your own email program, your Gmail, and go from there. And don't forget to include a fundraising link, obviously the fundraising link to your page, and write a catchy subject line, before sending it out to your contacts. Like, I'm trekking 100 kilometers across the desert, for shelter, or something like that. Tell your potential donors why you're participating in this challenge, like your why, why the Shelter Foundation is important to you, what you're most excited about, what you're nervous about, what the challenge is doing in terms of pushing you out of your comfort zone. You can include a statistic or 2 about domestic violence, about shelters in Canada from the fact sheet that's in the file section. Really be very genuine and explain why you're doing this, and what it means to you that your donor is going to support you. And in that same vein, you might want to reach out to your local shelter to learn more about the services and support they offer. Get them to tell you a few stories about how the funds you raise are going to make a difference for women and children, and share this with your donors. Share it in the email when you're asking for a donation, or use it in your follow-ups with your donors. Just keep it really real. The other thing that Carly and I learned as professional fundraisers is that people give to people. That's, a really critical thing. So not only are they giving theoretically to you, in other words, they're sponsoring you, but they want to know that you're helping people, that women and kids are really having a big change, positive change in their life because of what they're doing by supporting you. And keep your supporters up to date. Their gift tells you that they're invested in you and what lies ahead on the challenge. So, check in periodically with fundraising and training updates. Thank your list of supporters for being behind you in your local shelter. You may want to set up a list of your donors' names and email addresses as they come in. Like, you can set up a simple Excel file to track this, and that way you can send out a periodic email update to all of your donors. Again, Facebook posts are great, but not everyone's on Facebook, or people have a million friends and they won't see your post. So getting a personalized email, getting an email has a more personal touch because you can customize it to your audience, to your donors. So those are some great, just general fundraising tips and best practices. So Carly has a few words on saying thank you. So do you want to wait so you can see how the slide kind of comes up? Because I sort of have that little thing about PS, you've received a sponsorship thing at the end. So
Yeah, I kind of want to do it in this order. Like I sort of want to say, saying thank you is so important in the work that we do as fundraisers and in the tasks that you're undertaking, in fundraising for this challenge. I'm sure that those of you who have started fundraising online have now realized that you get an automatic email from me letting you know every time you've received a sponsorship. And that's just an automatic function that's telling you about that gift. I do have to say that occasionally I'm accidentally, and then I can't explain that.
What's that?
I'm just trying to think about this. I don't think it's necessarily the email that they're getting from me is just a donation notification. So I don't think I need to explain that it's that I'm getting.
No, the email that they're getting is just a notification that someone's made a donation on your page. That's what
I don't even think that we need to tell them that. I mean, they should figure that out by now. I don't think
that's
relevant.
But then how are you going to describe the email? What email are you talking about? Because
I think I'll just pretend that doesn't exist.
But then how are you going to explain this whole knowing?
I'm going to say occasionally I'm accidentally copied on thank you notes to donors.
See, I think you should actually tell them, because they don't realize that they're not emailing their friend. Like, to me, that's the big fuck up in this, is that they think they were sending a note to their donor and they're not. They're sending it to you. To me, that's the larger mistake.
Oh, I see.
Right?
The larger mistake is that it's a shitty email.
It's that too. But I think it's both. So what I've done is I've just moved this you received sponsorship email in the middle there. And I'll just.
Okay, so as those of you who have started fundraising online have realized, or may have noticed, or have realized by now, every time you receive a donation to your online fundraising page, you receive an automatic email from me letting you know about that donation. The problem that I'm seeing is that too often trekkers are replying to that email as though replying to that email thinking that that email is going to their donor, when really, in fact, they're just replying to me. So that's sort of the first error, is thinking that replying to that email is replying to your donor. What you're going to need to do is actually send them a separate email thanking them for their gift. The second error is that I'm seeing that in those emails that you think that you're communicating with your donor, and too often these thank you notes aren't particularly compelling. So I know that you're professionals, you deal with clients every day. I'm very confident that all of you are capable of more than sort of a quickly fired off, appreciate it, or thanks so much. So I really encourage you to take the time to write something personal to your donors, no matter the size of the gift, even if that means waiting a few hours until you have time to do it properly.
So do you see what I have on the screen now? Is it fine?
Thank you. Size of gifts. Yeah. So much for the importance of the donation. Now it's going to offer safety. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe you would just say it as, more than just simply, appreciate or thanks so much, really speak to the importance of their donation.
Okay.
Okay. We're in the home stretch, everybody. So I'm just going to finish off with something that I call the 3 A's, or the 3A approach to fundraising success. And it's really, again, part of the best practices we've been talking about so far. Be authentic, be yourself, speak from the heart, tell people why you're doing this, why it's meaningful. Part of me wants to give examples of people who are doing this really well, but then I'm afraid that if I find Caroline Bale does this really well on Facebook. She's very genuine, but I don't know if we should be actually calling out specific people, because then they're going to get mired in I've got to follow Caroline. I've got to see what she's doing. And so I think I won't bother, but I just find her, like, every time she does a post, she says something different, and it's always really genuine. But anyway, that's just a sidebar. Yeah. So, speak from the heart, express why you're doing this, really what it's going to mean for the women and children that you're helping, how giving them a safe place to go is literally life-saving for them, or that this is the scariest thing that you've ever done, that you're taking yourself, you're doing this international trip and you're hiking and you're sleeping in tents, and, be authentic, because people respond to real people. you have to make the ask. So the second A is ask. You can't just, as I said earlier, put a general comment on Facebook, look at this great thing I'm doing, it would be wonderful to have you on board. You need to actually say, I would really appreciate it if you would make a donation to support the cause. Would you please support me, or would you please make a donation? So make the ask, whether you're doing it at a fundraising event and you're at the front of the room and you want to encourage people to make an additional donation, or you're doing it face-to-face, or you're doing it in an email. Don't leave it up to their imagination. Actually ask them to donate. And lastly, the final A, show appreciation. We just talked about this. Say thank you right away, although, again, not immediately, like as in thanks, period, but give yourself a little time. You can certainly send an email later that evening or even the next day to express sincere appreciation.
In a timely way.
Yeah, in a timely way. Yeah, say thank you in a timely way. That's good.
I think you're right.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Say thank you. Okay, show appreciation to your supporters along the way. So, maybe as we've talked, send email updates leading up to the trek, and certainly when you get back. A lot of trekkers in the past have done thank you notes or done a little thank you event. There's lots of ideas that we can talk about down the road, but these are going to basically help you have fundraising success. Being authentic, making the ask, and showing appreciation. These are all the ways that you're going to have success. So with that, that's all, folks. As you know, for today, we are happy to help you with your fundraising journey, as well as the actual, leading up to our true journey. Carly is always here for you, as am I. But we hope that you can use the resources that we've spent a lot of time and put a lot of thought to prepare for you. And that's it. Any last words, Carly?
That's good.
Okay.
Carly's good.
Carly's good. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Oh, and also, again, if you're listening to this live, just a reminder, you can go back and click the same link that you're watching now, and you can watch this webinar all over again. You can fast forward, you can rewind. So enjoy.